Welcome to Dakota Starry Nights. In this episode, we're going to be covering how to optimize the Explore Scientific ultra-lightweight Dobsonian telescope. Today we're going to be focusing mainly on controlling ambient light, which interferes with contrast, and especially if you're using a PBS 14 night vision monocular that I have here. For deep sky, this is how I like to roll. It gives me incredible views, basically about doubles the aperture here. This is a 12-inch, but with that PBS 14, it's unbelievable. There's a couple of other things I have here, and this is something new. I have a dew shield attached here. We're going to be covering that. Also right here we have a light baffle that goes around the cage. The cage comes with a baffle that velcros to the back, but you still get a lot of light coming in, ambient light that is, coming in through the sides and diminishing the dim light that you're really trying to work with when it comes to DSOs. There are a few other things I'm going to cover, so let's get right to it. Okay, so the first optimization we're going to take a look at here is attaching the cage to the truss poles. Now, if you've done this before, it kind of makes a guy feel like he's the designated driver in a car full of drunks, because you've got these things every which way possible, and you got to grab both of them at the same time. Hold this up, balance this like that, then pull the screw out of your pocket, stick it in there, and tighten it up while you're holding the cage in your hand. This is a mess, really. And there are other Truss Dobsonian telescopes that are like this. Explore Scientific is not the only one. Some of them come with the tops attached and some of them don't. And it just makes it more difficult to attach the cage to the trusses. The good news is I figured out an easy fix for this that's inexpensive and anybody can do it. And I'll show you what that is. So what we have here is a thin piece of plastic that I've gotten off a bookbinder. In the center there's a hole that's drilled that's 11/64 or thereabouts. And the idea is to get it to screw in like so. You want just enough tension there to hold that in to where it won't slide off. And I call this the red pill. And the red pill is going to sober those guys up and get them to behave. So you simply start out by matching them up like so. You take your screw and you put it in there, and then on the inside that would normally go where the truss is, just simply lightly thread it, a couple of 3 turns, not all the way through, just like that. And now that holds that in place. And the thread is sticking out on the back side. And you do that to all 4 of them. And that'll allow you to attach the cage easily with all of these connected. And you won't have to be fishing for your screws, pulling them out of your pocket, because they're going to already be loaded into the holes. Works like a dream. And here you can see it's just sticking out past about 1/4 of an inch, no more. And that keeps this from falling out of there. So there they are, all attached and ready to receive the cage. So now that we got all the poles sobered up, we'll put the cage on. And you could go clockwise or one opposite, whatever, it doesn't matter. Now you can already see how much easier this is, because if you've done this before, you know what I'm talking about. That was just the cover that I have for the secondary. It's a vitamin bottle that I cover the secondary with, and I do have a cover over my primary, which I'll show you here in a minute, because that's always a good thing. Of course, this probably wouldn't have done anything. It's light as a feather. but that's a good example of why it's always good to have a cover on your primary until you're good to go. And now we get this one, and they're still loose, but it's a dream. I'm telling you guys, I've fought this, you know, I mean, you get a little bit better with it in practice without having the little red pill on there, but having the red pill is just like, whew, it's just so much better. Well, you just saw how easy it was. I mean, so now I tighten these up, and then I'll tighten these up. And that's it. It's that simple. She's good to go. So let's take a look at this other optimization, the cover for the primary, which is pretty good to have. I highly recommend it. Doesn't cost nothing really. Okay, this is a corrugated piece of plastic that came with a scope that I had bought, but you could use regular cardboard, but I do like the fact that it is plastic because it doesn't shed any fiber or anything onto the primary. You basically notch the cardboard or the vinyl over here for this collimation Allen screw here, and there's another one back up in here against this wall of the mirror box. So it's pretty straightforward, nothing fancy. It just lifts up out of there and slides out like that, and then you take it out and you can wait until you've got the whole thing assembled, and then there's your primary. Nothing to it. All you're going to do is just, you know, make the appropriate notches for the fan here and for the bolt there, and then these other collimation screws there. Anybody can do this. I mean, this is simple. Just be careful when you're building it that you're not going to be dropping stuff on the primary. Okay, and it should be noted that on the mirror cover, the cover rests right here. There's a block that creates a ledge, and that's above the mirror itself, and there's 3 of them for each one of these adjustable Allen screws for your collimation. The point is that the cover never comes in contact with the mirror. You don't want it rubbing against the mirror surface. Alright, well, the next optimization we want to take a look at is ambient light. Now, I use a PVS 14 night vision monocular for this 12, and this is my DSO scope. And with night vision, or even if you don't have night vision, but particularly with night vision, you don't want any ambient light leaking into the optical path, because that's just going to get accelerated by the PVS 14 and cut back on your contrast and your ability to see the finer details in different pieces of nebulosity. Explore Scientific, I believe, sells a shroud now for this, and if not, I highly suggest you make it, because this thing, don't get me wrong, you know, I'm pointing all this stuff out, and I don't want you to think that I'm knocking the scope. I'm not. This scope has really been a great performer. I've had it for a couple of years now, since that review. This is Gen 1, okay? And the rocket box was a dog. It was a dog, but I fixed it, and I've been pretty happy with it. And all I'm doing is tweaking it and making it better. For the price point, it's really hard to beat. And I understand the Gen 2s are a little better, but hey, I don't have one, so I can't speak from experience. But back to optimizing this for light, the kind you want to see, not the kind you don't want to see. So when you're at a star party, there's ambient light. If you're in town, ambient light. And believe me, you want to maximize every little photon that you can get, especially for those DSOs. The moon and the planets, as you probably know, it doesn't matter. But when you're talking DSOs, you want to optimize it. So the first thing to do is to get a shroud for your trusses. Now, there's other places where this thing leaks light, and that is up here in the cage. Okay, there's a lot of light that comes through in the cage. They provide you with a shield back here, and that's okay, but you're still getting light coming in from everywhere else. And so we're going to make a shroud for this that fits on the inside and put it in there, and that way we have the entire cage covered up. The other thing I want to talk about is the mirror box. Now, the mirror box, it has 2 fans here, and these leak light, especially if there's light on the ground or you've got it tipped like that and now it's up like that, and light's coming into this inside the mirror box, and it is taking away contrast. Now, Again, I'm not knocking the system, but there's an easy fix for this. So here's the fix. It's basically a piece of foam that I got at a hobby shop and 2 magnets, and they have them to where they're stick on one side. And all you have to do is take that and put that there. That's it. And so once you get your mirror acclimated to the temperature, to the ambient temperature, because you don't want to cover this permanently, you want to use these fans to get that 12 down to ambient temperature, and you just clip them on there. It's that simple. And this is really inexpensive, and again, this is something anybody can make. There's another place where you get ambient light. This goes for most Dobsonians. Back here you have the mirror that's open, and there's another fix for that. Same solution. We get a bigger piece of foam, we put magnets on the back of it. Once we get ambient temperature, we just put it over the top like that. Boom, covered. Nothing to it. And so that'll cover anything coming off the ground or anybody passing by when you've got it pointed like this and they're coming by with a lighter or whatever. It protects it. You may be thinking, wow, you know, this guy's kind of getting a little over on the deep end with this light stuff, but no, I'm telling you, especially if you're doing night vision, you want to get the inside of this as dark as possible. The only light you want coming through here is from a DSO. A little extra can mean a lot when it comes to DSOs. There is one other thing that I have, because again, you know, I'm looking to optimize as much light as possible, and I made a dew shield for this, and it's not for dew, but it's to keep the secondary back. This adds about 8 inches to the front of the scope. It fits over the top of the cage. It's bolted down. I'll show you a little more details on how that is. I think it was a clothes basket, you know, like you put your laundry in and stuff. It was bigger, it had handles, it was about this high, came up about that high, had handles, and I just cut the vinyl, spray painted it inside with plastic, flat black, and it fits right on there, and it gives me that extra 8 inches of darkness so that that secondary is deep down in there, and I get really great results with this. You would be surprised what this little puppy can do. This 12, I had it at a star party, Badlands National Parks. It was amazing what this was doing. I read on Cloudy Nights a guy said he'd rather have a 12 with a PVS 14 night vision than an 18 without it. And I came across that when I was trying to decide whether to go up in aperture or to get a PVS 14. And I went the PVS 14 route and kept the 12, and I am so glad I did that, because this has really been great, particularly in town. Because in town, I don't care if you got an 18 or 20 inch mirror, if you're fighting light pollution, that's it. But with the PVS, you put a narrow band filter, 7, 12 nanometers, cut that light pollution out, pop goes those DSOs. So this has really been a great little scope, super portable. And if you watch my video on making setting circles for Dobsonian telescopes with that, it's better than go-to, because it's a little more fun, gives you a little bit of challenge, but at the same time gets you there. And you don't have the weight, it's just a simple platform. So anyway, let's go on to getting the ambient light under control in the cage. Okay, so what I have here is a piece of carpet, rubber backed, and this is available at building supply stores. This is typically used like a runner that you would put down a staircase or perhaps a hallway. They sell it by the foot. Now, to do the 12-inch cage, you need 4 feet, and this is 26 inches, I believe, long. Let's see. Yeah, 26, but it only needs to be about 12. So 12 inches to get you underneath your shroud and all the way up to the top of the cage. This part here is ribbed, and this is nice because it's going to act like baffles, trapping the stray light that wants to come in. So that's kind of sweet. And this will be facing the outside, give us a nice rubberized, waterproof finish, so moisture and dew won't make it limp or, you know, come apart. So we're going to cut a piece and fit it inside the cage, and I'll show you how to fasten that and how to trim it all up. Okay, so here's the piece we got here. It's 43 and a half long by 12 and 5/8 wide. And we're going to vacuum it off to get any of that fuzzy stuff off there, to clean that up, because we want to get it as clean as possible before we install it. Okay, so I've got the carpet laid down in here, and I'm putting the splice opposite the secondary back here. So the focuser is over here. So I've set it down in there and got it as tight on the inside as the cage as possible. So this will allow me to mark where the spider is, so I can cut a slot 2 inches in order to drop it down to the rim of the cage and locate the hole for the focuser back here. By the way, you're going to want to cover your secondaries when you're doing this. Okay, so I've got it pressed down, and there's the spider right there. We're going to mark for the focuser right here with a Sharpie pen so we can cut a hole. Okay, from the edge of the light baffle up to the center point of where the hole's going to be for the focuser is about 4.5 inches. And then the drawer tube itself is 2 1/4, and so I went 3 1/4 to allow room for the drawer tube to go in and out without getting hung up on the light baffle. Okay, so there it is in place with the hole cut, and it gives us enough clearance to where the focuser can move in and out. What I'm going to do now is tack this edge here with sheet metal screws to keep it secure. So the best way I'm finding to get the screws in, don't need a lot of them really, and the way to do it, if you try to drill through the carpet, you foul the bit up. So you lift the carpet up, find a spot about in the middle, then drill your hole, your pilot hole, then take an awl, a scratch awl, and then go through the carpet, punch through the carpet where the hole is, right there like that. Then take your screw, and you want small screws. You know, I've got these little small sheet metal screws, and they're dark, which is nice. And let's see where that hole is. Right there, so it should be right there. So now it's in the hole, and because it's already punched and pre-drilled, you can just put some pressure on it and screw it down in there. And that's it, and that holds it. When you're going around the corner, just make sure you keep it flush to the edge of the cage and that you've got it nice and flat. Pick your spot and then drill a hole. When we come to the seam, I'm just going to run some hot glue against the foam and then put some black Gorilla duct tape on the outside, and that should secure it. Okay, so we've hot glued it along the edge here and held it together until it settled up, and now I'm going to run a piece of duct tape, that Gorilla black duct tape, to kind of clean that edge up and give it a little more support. The other thing I'd like to mention is when it comes to putting the screws on, what I did is after I drilled it, right after I drilled it, I vacuumed it. And each one as I went along, that way to keep control of the aluminum flakes so they don't get all over the place and stuck on the cloth right here. Okay, and that's the final product right there, dressed up as far as the seam goes, but there's one more place where we need to block some ambient light out, and that's by the focuser. Okay, so right here there's a gap from the light baffle to the frame that supports the focuser, and you could even see the rack right down there from the rack and pinion focuser. So we're going to run a piece of this Gorilla black duct tape here and then lay it on top of here in order to seal that light out, because you do get light coming through and hitting down in there. So there you have it, trimmed out. Okay, this one's a little more complicated, but it has a great benefit on night vision, particularly if you're around a lot of ambient light. What this is a tub. I got it at a department store. You've got to search around for these. It may be difficult to find the right size. This opening here that eventually was cut 13 inches in diameter, and then you need about an inch lip. And the way this mounts, there are these butterfly nuts and it's 4 of these screws that come in through the cage right here. You drill through there like that. Oops. What I did here, this is a 3/8 inch door seal or window seal, and it's self-stick. And the reason why that's there is so that when you put the dew shield, bolted dew shield on there, it seals against the dew shield and clears the nut to keep that stud in place. And then when that is done, you locate your holes and set them in there like so. Put this rubber gasket over the holes and then use your wing nut to snug it up, and that gives you this dew shield. For me, the hardest part was finding this thing. You know, I went to a lot of department stores with a tape measure, measuring all their tubs and buckets and stuff until I finally found the right one. This doesn't weigh very much at all. This light baffle we put on the cage is very light, but it certainly is pretty effective in reducing ambient lighting. This only cost me like $6. These little upgrades are not very expensive, but they're very effective. Okay, so here's an upgrade for the leveling platform when you're going to be using setting circles. I've done a video here on Dakota Starry Nights setting circles for Dobsonian telescopes. And originally I had a bicycle wheel out here in order to mark where the star was pointing so that you can rotate the carousel to that mark. What I've come up with though is something even better because it's more compact and it's less intrusive. Basically this is just a piece of aluminum that's been bent. It comes like this and goes underneath the platform and bolts where the center screw is in that big wing nut. And so it's basically a dial that's underneath the platform here. And so if you was to get on a star and it said that it was supposed to be 60, but you were like at 50, then you would just move this over to where it's pointing, okay, so that you know that that's really going to be 60, and then you would turn the carousel until you got to 60, and now you should go back and you should be right there on 60 and should be aligned, and you keep doing that until you get aligned. The other thing is I've got this light here. It's basically just a cap light, and a guy just can put that on like that, and that way it shines all night so that when you're moving it around at night you don't have to be putting your cap light down there to see what it looks like, because that really lights it up pretty well. It's really sweet. Nothing to it. It just takes 3 AA batteries. These things can be had at lots of places, discount stores, building supply, but that's another little upgrade to this. Really makes this well. Guys, I got to tell you, I really like using this. It gets you within a pizza pie and sometimes right on the target, especially if you're using a wide field eyepiece. It's just amazing. To me, the whole go-to thing in the computer and the batteries and all that, it's just really almost a waste of money, and certainly adds more weight and complexity to getting out there and just doing some visual. With this, it's just one star and you're good. You calibrate this, you calibrate the digital setting circle, all that's in the video, and you're good to go. Well, that about wraps it up. If you like what you saw here today, give us a thumbs up or subscribe. We're always coming up with new ideas to make the hobby more enjoyable and spend more time looking at objects rather than fighting the equipment. And thank you for tuning in to Dakota Starry Nights. Clear skies.